So unless you don't have access to internet or been living under a rock, you've probably heard about the Barbie movie in some way or another. At this point, it's a certified summer blockbuster, making over $1 billion at the box office, which is just insane. Also, quick side note, Barbie's been around longer than Wendy's. Like, you could get a Barbie doll before you could get a square burger. It's incredible to me. Naturally, any movie this big is gonna have a couple of controversies surrounding it. Essentially, you have one half of the internet claiming that the movie is the worst thing that happened in the cinema and is potentially the downfall of our society as a whole. And you have the other half saying that the first half are man-children with bad taste. Whatever you want to say about it, can't deny this movie has been crushing it at the box office. People love Barbie, which honestly isn't surprising because, like I said, dolls before square burgers, just insane. So I actually saw Barbie on opening night with my family. We did the whole dressing in pink thing because my brother went with his girlfriend and he wanted us to match him because he was embarrassed. Sorry, big bro, if you're saying this in the future. And since then, I started this amazing and critically acclaimed YouTube channel, and yeah, I'm gonna chase the clout. So if you don't want to watch a teenager tell you whether or not you should watch a movie that came out a month ago, well then too bad, because you already clicked on the video, so now you gotta watch it all the way through. So settle in for a Zoomer's review of Barbie. So heads up, I have a lot I want to say about this movie, but I'm going to try to keep my commentary on hold to the very end, the plot synopsis, because like I said, I have a lot I want to say. I just figured that way it gives us more of a chance to all be on the same page. The movie starts off with an homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey, with that scene where the apes are on the mountain, but this time it's little girls destroying baby dolls, which isn't disturbing at all, not even in the slightest. The movie goes on to explain that Barbie acted as a catalyst for women to go after the careers that were traditionally reserved for men. It says that all the problems with feminism and the patriarchy is solved, a little hint to the audience of what's to come. Unsurprisingly, the Barbie movie centers around Barbie, who's not a doll, but not a human. The movie's never 100% clear on that, but like I said, keeping the commentary on hold, we'll get to that later. Unsurprisingly, our story takes place in Barbie land. It's immediately established that the Barbies kind of run everything, like they're doctors, lawyers, bus drivers, beach employees, the main Barbie's a president. Point is, Barbie does a lot. Also, take a drink every time I say Barbie. Our story centers around stereotypical Barbie, which is pretty much just the Barbie you think about whenever anybody mentions the word Barbie. Barbie. At the beginning of our hero's journey, Barbie essentially lives a normal life in her dream house. She gets up and her hair's done for her, she puts on her makeup and it looks perfect, she eats a perfect breakfast, and then she floats magically into her pink Lamborghini. You know, it's like a regular Joe Schmo tends to do. After getting ready in the morning, Barbie heads off to the beach to go meet up with her friends. Barbie. Oh, and who could forget? Barbie. There's also Ken, main Ken. Oh yeah, and Alan. He's here for some reason. It's here we're introduced to the Ken's roles in Barbie land. I use the word roles lightly because they don't really do anything, they just sort of exist. The movie says that they're in a relationship, but they don't really ever go on dates or anything like that. Fittingly to like the actual Barbie doll, Ken's largely just an accessory in the Barbies' lives. Most of the Kens are fine and pretty content with this, except for stereotypical Ken, who's fittingly with stereotypical Barbie. He wants something more, but he doesn't really know what because he doesn't have a wiener. So after that annoying bit about beating each other off that goes on for way too long, the Barbies and Kens go back to stereotypical Barbie's house to have a big old rager, and they just party their hearts away. However, the amazing party's broken up when stereotypical Barbie asks, "Where do you go when you die?" The music stops, everybody turns to her, and the mood is just extremely brought down. However, stereotypical Barbie manages to remedy the situation by just getting off of it immediately. Later that day, Ken asks to stay over, and Barbie turns him down so she can have another girls' night, and Ken goes home mildly upset. But again, he doesn't really do anything about it because they just kind of exist. That night, Barbie has some mysterious visions, which she believes are from the real world, and it kind of messes with her head a little bit, but she shakes it off and tries to ignore it. Until the next morning, where we cross to the next section of our hero's journey. This is where the conflicts start to rise. Barbie wakes up and her not shower is cold, her toast that she doesn't ever eat is burnt, and somebody forgot to put on r/god mode. Barbie can't float into her convertible. Oh yeah, also her feet are flat and starts developing cellulite. To top it all off, she's also seeing memories from the little girl in the real world again, but this time she's seeing it just walking around. Barbie starts freaking out about this and immediately tells all the other people in Barbie land, and they all tell her she needs to go to Weird Barbie to get this problem fixed. So, stereotypical Barbie goes to meet weird Barbie, who I'm just gonna call Kate McKinnon because it's literally just the same character that she plays in every single movie ever. So Kate McKinnon, but not from Ghostbusters, tells Barbie that all this is happening because somebody stopped playing with her in the real world, and she needs to go to the real world to fix that shit immediately. So Barbie straps on her Birkenstocks, hops in her pink convertible, and leaves Barbie land. But halfway there, she notices that Ken's tucked into the car, and he begs to tag along with her. Barbie says yes after some annoyance, and they head off to a really cool CGI sequence into the real world. When they show up to the real world, they kind of immediately realize how shit things are. Like, literally, Barbie gets catcalled, slapped on the ass, and groped, all within the span of like 5 minutes. She also sees that the real world has a lot more males in the workforce than in Barbie land. Like, she goes to talk to some construction workers and realizes that they're men, not Barbies, and she's like, What could this be? Men? Eventually, Barbie makes her way to the school where the little girl who plays with her goes, and she actually manages to talk to her, which is a little weird when you think about it, but again, saving commentary till the end. I can't remember this character's actual name for the life of me, so I'm just gonna call her generic angsty teenage girl, because that's literally the only role she plays in this film. Generic angsty teenage girl immediately shatters Barbie's worldview, telling her that Barbie is not a feminist icon and actually portrays a harmful stereotype that has held women back for decades. She also calls Barbie a fascist, which I don't understand, but they gave the character black clothes. She has to be edgy and topical, so yeah. Barbie then runs away from the school and heads to Mattel headquarters to try to get some answers on what to do. When she gets there though, the execs immediately try to put her back in a box, and Barbie says, yeah, nah. This is also where we're introduced to Gloria, who's actually the mother of edgy teenage girl, and the one who's been playing with Barbie. She saves her, they pick up teenage girl, they head back to Barbie Land to try to escape the Mattel execs and figure out where to go from there. The only problem is when they get back, they see that Barbie Land has turned into the Ken-dom. See, while Barbie was trying to figure out what was wrong with her in the real world, Ken was on the fast track to becoming an internet incel, taking in the patriarchy for all of its flaws, learning about the joys of tractors, horses, and a little bit of sexism. Probably drinking a whole 6-pack of Prime, watching the Andrew Tate podcast along the way. Now all the Barbies have turned into like brainwashed bimbos that don't know how to defend themselves, and all the Kens have become generic dude bro douchebags. Ken, now just like the guy from Borderlands 3, confronts Barbie and calls her out for not giving him the time of day and telling her that he's now become the leader of the Ken-dom and is going to rewrite the constitution so that Kens control Barbie Land instead of Barbies. Barbie, upset, freaks out, has a bit of a mental breakdown, and kind of goes into depression Barbie mode. Noticing that Barbie's kind of given up, Gloria, generic teenage girl, try to head back to the real world where they're confronted by Alan. Alan encourages them to go back and try to help save Barbie Land, so they pick up stereotypical Barbie. The group head back to Kate McKinnon's house and try to brainstorm an idea on how to defeat the Kens. Gloria starts venting about how much she hates being a woman in the real world and talking about her issues, and it snaps one of the Barbies that they kidnapped out of the trance that the Kens had put them in. They then use this technique to try to kidnap every other Barbie and restore them back to their old consciousness so they can all rise up, pit the Kens against each other, and take back Barbie Land. They pit the Kens against each other by switching partners, which is actually kind of funny. There's this whole scene on the beach where they're all singing to each other and the Barbies are preying on their fragile male egos. You gotta chuckle out of me, but again, saving commentary till later. A quick fight scene in a musical number, and the Kens have pretty much defeated each other. Meanwhile, the Barbies decide to stop the Kens vote to take over Barbie Land and maintain control. After all the action dies down, Barbie and Ken have a heart-to-heart. Ken tells Barbie he loves her, goes in for a kiss. Barbie says no, and tells him that he has to learn how to live without her and figure out who he is without the help of Barbie. Ken realizes he's Ken-enough and decides to go figure out who he is on his own. Barbie decides to do the same thing for herself, while as the creator of Barbie's ghost randomly appears and tells her that she has to go figure out who she is outside of Barbie Land and be her own person. Barbie gets a pair of pink Birkenstocks, goes into the real world, and decides to go see her gynecologist. And that's pretty much the plot of Barbie. So do I think Barbie is a trash movie meant to turn little girls into guy-hating, misandrist hate-mongers? No. Do I think that Barbie is a by-the-books kids movie with some meta-humor meant to pacify audiences, sell toys, and bruise the pockets of Mattel execs, and pander to liberal audiences? Also no. But I do kind of see the complaints from both sides of the argument. And I don't mean in the douchey Twitter centrist, guys, can we all just stop arguing and listen to each other? Like, come on. Kind of crap that most guys spout on their Twitter accounts from their mother's basement. I mean, I see why people are upset with Barbie, but I also see why people love it a lot. And people definitely love this film because it has grossed over $1 billion, which is just, like I said, crazy. So now it's time for the review and some commentary on just the production and stuff in general. Anybody who thinks this movie isn't at least attempting to tell a deeper story aside from hate all men is just objectively wrong. Like, there's genuinely some deep and introspective stuff here. Barbie starts the movie living essentially a perfect life. Nothing goes wrong, nothing changes, nothing to strive toward or learn. There's also not much to live for. Yes, Barbie's change is prompted by vanity because she doesn't want to gain cellulite and end up looking like a disformed Barbie, but throughout the course of the runtime, you get the idea that she really wants something more than to be stereotypical Barbie. Though I'll admit, this plot point does kind of pay a backseat to the feminist stuff, I do see Barbie's yearn for something greater than the eternity of perfectness that her old life gives her. There's specifically a scene after Barbie and Ken arrive in the real world, and she has her meeting with annoying edgy teenage girl and gets arrested. Barbie goes to sit on a park bench, and things take kind of a dark turn. Everything pretty much gets the Zack Snyder filter, and she looks around the park. She sees couples playing, arguing, people running, having a hard day, and being super upset, yelling at each other, sitting around a fountain, just things like that. She really takes some time to grapple with what it means to be human. Then she looks to her left and sees an old woman, and they smile at each other. And Barbie says to her, "You're beautiful." I believe this was the writer's attempt at showing that Barbie see the duality of human life, how things can be difficult but also beautiful in the end through all the trauma. They follow this up later when Barbie meets her founder, and they talk about Barbie's place in the world and how she's not quite sure where she fits into things. And the creator tells her it's up to her to find it. I haven't seen a lot of reviews talk about this, mostly just because, the other aspects of the film are just so jarring and easy to talk about because they get clicks, but stuff like this is where the movie really shines, when it puts the jokes on hold and lets its introspective themes come into play. I do wish that they'd kind of double down on self-identity as a core theme in this movie. It ends up feeling kind of half-baked when they set it up so well in the second act but don't pay it off in the third. I understand why they didn't, so they could make room for more of the gender politics stuff, but again, that's the aspect of the movie that feels the least important to me, but we'll get to that later. I've also seen a lot of people bashing Ken in this movie, and honestly, I don't think it's 100% warranted. Yeah, he's written pretty dumb, but honestly, every character in the movie is written pretty dumb, but I see it as this movie's attempt at having campy dialogue for a campy and out there story. I mean, even the characters acknowledge how absurd things are throughout the film. On the contrary, I actually think Ken has one of the best arcs in the movie. Barbie feels like she doesn't get quite a full story arc, as she's kind of caught between the feminist stuff and the self-identity themes that I was talking about earlier, and every other character kind of just feels like set dressing or just completely underbaked with not enough time to get fleshed out. Looking at you, Gloria, an edgy teenage girl. I've seen Ken's arc interpreted a few different ways. Some people saying he's meant to mimic how boys grow. Originally, Ken and Barbie are boyfriends because that's just what you do. He's so obsessed with her because he doesn't know any better, but then he learns about the patriarchy and wants to do it because it looks cool. Then he realizes that his actions hurt people and he can't force his way through a relationship with Barbie. He needs to learn to be himself independent of her. Personally, I don't love this argument because I don't think it's smart to compare growing up to destroying an entire society. I think Ken's arc is more of a commentary on how negative male stereotypes affect young men. I mentioned originally that Ken was just an accessory to Barbie, literally someone who has no personality of their own. And he goes to the real world and he's respected, admired, and actually treated like a person. He lets this go to his head and starts learning all the wrong things on what it means to be a man. He thinks you need to objectify women, flex your muscles, ride a horse, lord your newfound masculinity over others. But just like all those alpha male idiots that peddle this stuff on the internet, Ken feels empty doing this and openly admits he doesn't even want to. In the end, he's saved by the realization that his personality and masculinity isn't determined by that stuff, but by how he sees himself and his own self-confidence. That the path of masculinity isn't paved with sexism but self-acceptance, which is honestly a pretty healthy thing to teach young boys. Realistically, that's probably not what the writers had in mind, but I think that's the best way to interpret it. Okay, now for the big. I don't think the feminist aspect of this movie works, at all. Honestly, I feel like it should. If any movie is going to have a deep feminist message, I feel like it should be a Barbie movie, but it just fundamentally doesn't work very well here. I think part of that's because of the rules the director has established, and the other part of it is just bad writing in general. Going back to the rules aspect, I feel like the feminist messaging hits hardest when Barbie is in our world. Like that first scene where they enter the real world was actually pretty well done. There's some nice close-up camera shots where you can really see how thrown for a loop Barbie is, where anybody even says anything to her. And the look on her face when she realizes that construction workers aren't female in our world is actually pretty effective at conveying how much of a fish out of water she was. And originally I thought the catcalling was a little bit much, especially considering that Ken was right there, but I think that kind of illustrates the point even further. I think the director was trying to show that women feel this way even when men are around, that it's just an innate feeling that's there even if you as a man can't feel it, and it's actually a pretty strong message to portray. I think it also goes to show just how different the culture in our world is compared to Barbie world, where they wouldn't even think about this kind of thing, meanwhile it's so present in our society. Also, I think another hidden message is how oblivious Ken is to the whole thing. He's kind of just walking along, nodding heads to everybody. It goes to show that men don't really notice when this kind of thing happens, And I think it really goes to show how more effective the feminist message is in our world as opposed to the Barbie world. Like, for instance, there's actually a really funny scene where they meet the CEO of Mattel, and he's trying to name every or any female executive at Mattel, and he can't. And what's funny is, while I was doing research for this video, I had to watch Ben Shapiro's review, and he almost word for word did the exact same thing, like non-ironically. There's more decent moments like this, and Barbie explored feminism pretty well in a satirical way, but honestly, the third act kind of just trumps it all and throws it out the window. Like, the first two acts kind of jimmied in some feminist messaging there with some smart satire. The third act just smacks you directly in the nuts with it. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I rolled my eyes pretty hard when I found out the cure to Ken's patriarchy was Gloria venting about how much men suck. Not only does this explanation not make sense, considering that Barbies are presidents, nurses, pilots, etc., so they should be very smart and capable people, so why aren't they able to stop Ken from steamrolling their entire society in the span of like a few hours? But it's also just kind of explained away with a out-of-pocket throwaway line that's twice as worse because it's lazy writing, because they were infected like smallpox, which is a disease, and yeah.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
I get the idea they were going for, that the patriarchy is just so ingrained in our society that it affects our government and how our society runs in general. And I think, again, it works really well when Barbie's in our society, it just doesn't transfer over to the Barbie land. Because while patriarchy is systemic, it doesn't work when you go to a place that's literally run by women who have been shown to be consistently smarter than the men that live there. Also, I wish they portrayed stunning patriarchy in some way other than just having Ken wear a Metallica robe showing off his chiseled abs. Plus, I wouldn't mind having Gloria's venting be involved in the solution some way. I just wish it wasn't the crux of how to fix the entire problem in the movie. And to be honest, it does come off as guy bashing. Maybe that's just my oversensitivity as a guy. I need to overcome my male fragility. Oh, you guys hear that? That's my virtue signal. It's going off. It's going off a lot. I understand that Gloria acts as Barbie's on-ramp, understanding women's plight in the real world. I just can't take the solution seriously. Like, it feels like a satirical sit that would be on SNL, sticking with the Kate McKinnon theme if you couldn't tell. But in all seriousness, I do think there's a place for this kind of thing in movies, where the dumb shit that we do as men gets called out, because we kind of need to have an open conversation about these topics instead of all of us just pointing fingers. I just, again, don't think it should be the entire crux and solution of this film's climax. They literally tell the Kens they can maybe have one small place in government, then proceed to strip them of all their power and send them back to second-class citizens. That's what really pissed me off about this movie. Why not have the Kens and Barbies form a society where everyone is equal towards more unification instead of separation like it was before? I mean, it's heavily implied that the Kens don't even have houses to go back to, that they just kind of stand around waiting for Barbies to come back. Granted, the Kens did do some objectively terrible things with the Barbies. Why not have the Barbies teach the Kens how to rule and govern and do all the amazing things that they do, while the Kens voice their mistreatment in a positive way rather than lashing out? This shows young men they don't have to be subservient losers like Ken were before, but also that they don't need to lord their power over others. This also teaches both genders that they can talk through their issues rather than just fighting with each other about them. I just feel like that would have sent a way more positive message than men fascist, men bad, women good, yell at men, problem solved. Again, it's obviously not that simple, and I definitely think that there's a place for this kind of thing in movies, and definitely a way to the whole patriarchy brainwash thing work. I just think it could have been better, if that makes sense. And I also think that if they did go to this route, it could reinforce the harmful message that women need to parent men, but it's just an idea. If you couldn't tell, I did not like this movie's third act at all, but the ending is actually pretty good. I'm glad they let Barbie go back to the real world and become a human. It would have been really dissatisfying to see her just stay in Barbie land and go back to her regular world. Pretty much I'm going on this whole adventure for no reason. Also, the pink Birkenstocks were a nice touch, combining the idealized style of Barbie land with the realism and discomfort of our world. If you couldn't tell, I really hate Birkenstocks. And at some point, I need to make a whole video about the style and the fits in this movie. Oh my god. Whoever they had in costume designing and set design, like, it really deserves its own video. I can't get into it here because I'm running out of time, but I really want to make a whole video just gushing about the style and the fits in this film. I'm going to college soon, so I've really been getting into style and fashion because I kind of dress like a little boy, but holy shit, I want to steal some of the more retro inspired fits that Barbie and Ken were. So do yourself a favor and go see Barbie. It might teach you a few things, you might end up hating it. It does fall short in some of its themes, but to be honest, it's got some good humor and you might get a laugh or two out of it. And who knows, maybe it might teach you about your place in the world as a man, and you might become less man. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye. Roll end card.
Barbie's such a bitch. She is just a witch.
I really hate her. Why does Ken date her?
Ken is such a man. I do all I can.
Just to do him.
Yes.
We just want to screw him.